Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're zooming in on something absolutely fascinating and honestly deeply human, the foundations of clinical psychopathology. We're not just, staring at a dry syllabus here. We're going to really dig into what happens when everyday behaviors cross that invisible line and become clinical struggles. How do professionals actually make sense of all that chaos? Well, consider this your roadmap. We're going to lay out exactly how to systematically unpack human behavior when it starts to break down.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote straight from our source material that really sets the stage. Venturing to the brain, psychopathology. I love this phrasing actually because it hits the nail right on the head. Psychopathology isn't just about, judging how people act on the outside. We literally have to venture inward. We're talking neurochemistry, brain structures, the whole biological shebang. To really get this, we have to realize that the behaviors we see, that's just the smoke. The fire is happening way deep down in the brain's wiring.
So what's your role in all this? The source frames it perfectly. Your main goal as a participant here is learning to identify. And let me tell you, that's way harder than it sounds. Because think about it, human behavior is a huge spectrum. The line between, say, just being naturally anxious and having a full-blown clinical anxiety disorder, it's pretty blurry. Symptoms overlap, people hide what they're feeling. So we're not just memorizing textbook definitions today. We're training our eyes to spot complex distress hidden right in plain sight.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this core concept, maladaptive behavior classification. Let's break that down because it's absolutely crucial. Look, we all have our quirks, right? But maladaptive behavior is different. We're talking about actions and thoughts that literally destroy a person's ability to function in day-to-day life. It's the difference between double-checking your front door and compulsively checking it for 3 hours until you lose your job. Classification is simply taking those destructive behaviors and organizing them into recognizable categories so we can actually, treat them. We can actually map this out step by step. Imagine a clinician meeting a patient for the first time. Step 1, venturing to the brain. They evaluate the neurobiology, the environment, the patient's cognitive state. Once they've got that baseline, they move to step 2, identifying the maladaptive behavior. Basically pinpointing exactly what's disrupting this person's life. And then, finally, step 3, classifying those distinct psychopathologies. It's a super logical pipeline, going straight from raw observation to a formal diagnosis.
So the crucial point is that human suffering can feel incredibly chaotic. When someone's in a crisis, it's like this tangled web of pain. But classification acts like a funnel. It takes that broad, messy idea of maladaptive behavior and narrows it down. We can think of these as the 4 landmarks of psychopathology. They're basically the major structural pillars that help us make sense of the vast mental health landscape.
All right, here are our 4 key destinations. Number 1, anxiety disorders. Think of this as the brain's threat detection system just completely stuck in overdrive, like your internal alarm ringing when there's no actual danger. Number 2, development disorders. These involve disruptions in the brain's early growth trajectory, so conditions like ADHD or the autism spectrum. Number 3, personality disorders. These are deeply ingrained, rigid patterns of behavior that make it incredibly tough to form stable relationships. And finally, number 4, mood disorders. This is where we see severe disruptions in emotional regulation, like the deep valleys of major depression or the extreme highs and lows of bipolar disorder.
To really lock this framework in, let's group these 4 pillars into 2 distinct camps. On one side, we've got anxiety and mood disorders. These generally relate to internal states and are often episodic. Think of them like a wave. A panic attack or depressive episode crests and then eventually recedes. But on the other side, development and personality disorders. These are rooted in structural traits. They are pervasive. A personality disorder doesn't just come and go in waves. It fundamentally shapes how that person interacts with the world every single day. Seeing that contrast between fluctuating states and permanent traits, a total game changer for identifying the root issue.
And this brilliantly illustrates our 4 areas as equal slices of a pie. But a quick reality check here, while it's super helpful to slice them up like this for learning, real clinical practice is way messier. Comorbidity is everywhere. These categories constantly overlap. You might have someone presenting with a severe mood disorder like depression, but it's actually being fueled by the exhaustion of an underlying developmental disorder like ADHD. Mastering this stuff isn't just about keeping the slices separate. It's about seeing how they all dynamically interact to make up a person's entire psychological state.
So we've mapped out the foundational architecture, from the broad idea of maladaptive behavior all the way down to the nuances of anxiety, development, personality, and mood. But I want to leave you with this final thought. Behind every single classification, behind every slice of that pie chart, there is a real human being. Organizing these disorders isn't just some cold academic exercise. It's the absolute crucial first step toward finding the right targeted treatment and offering genuine help. So are you ready to venture into the brain and identify the behaviors that shape human experience? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking out clear, structured understanding, and I'll see you next time.